And we're here live. Let's Change St. Louis. Kurt Wilson, Freedom Ochoa, man. I'm so glad you guys have joined me on the show today.
Excited to be here. You, John, were actually the one. I got introduced to Freedom being in the studio with you.
Show.
Is that true?
Yeah, I did not know Freedom.
I don't remember that you guys didn't know each other.
I think maybe we'd known of each other, but we'd
Oh.
definitely never been in the same room. And you said, "Hey, I'm doing this show at the studio. Would you come record with us?"
Yep.
And
Just
that's
like
where
today.
that's just like today.
Wow.
That's how it all went down, man. I was doing that event out at January Wabash Park in Ferguson.
Where he had his thing later.
Yeah, and then I was like, talking about Chef the City, I was like, man, I've heard of you. And then from that point on, now here we are running mates, man.
Oh, yeah. Running.
Running
In
and
fact,
running and gunning.
we're all running. In fact, we all ran to school this morning, dropped the kids off, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So we're all the drop-off dads now that we've got, all our little ones in Christian school. I want to sort of start off the conversation there. I think I was thinking, we talk a lot about revival in St. Louis and what we're hoping to see happen, and we want to see change happen in the lives of people and things like that. And I had this thought this morning as I was expecting to talk to you guys that, like, we drop our kids off, and the three of us have chosen to take our kids to Christian school,
Yeah.
And I think that when I think about when revival touches St. Louis, and you guys can, talk to this, who's worried about these kids and the schools they're in and what they're being taught? Like, how are we going to reach that generation, right? So, like, we've made decisions to, like, make sure our kids are surrounded with a certain type of influence and learning things about Jesus and stuff, even if they're not around us. But I think revival, when it really comes to St. Louis, and I'm believing it is, and you guys as well, we're like, okay, let's get people saved, let's get them delivered, let's get them healed, and all these different, types of things. But I don't hear a lot of people like, let's get the school changed, let's get so what do you guys think about that generation, how we're going to reach them?
Man, such a tough question.
Okay.
But I mean, the big transition for me this past year was, my kids have been in public school all the way up till this year. So this was my first year at a Christian school. And, my son I felt like was just under attack on so many things.
Yeah.
And for me, my heart's always been like, well, these kids in this public school still need to be reached. If I can get my kid lit up on fire, then my kid can set these kids ablaze. And,
Right.
but at the same time, I was just like, well, there's got to be a different strategy that I can go for. So, I mean, I've really just been pouring into these youth because we just started a youth night at our church. And the goal is to, hey, take the couple, just like Jesus did. He took 12 disciples and let them go out and do whatever. So I'm like, man, if I can just pour into these kids and give them ownership of this youth night, that eventually they'll start inviting kids and then, draw them in because we picked a Friday night. So
Yeah,
I know that, hey, that's going to be a challenge. If any kid shows up on a Friday night, they actually, there's a reason why they don't have anything to do, or their parents want them to get the free food. So whatever it works, but I believe just in those, genuine relationships and just experiencing those type of settings, that they're going to end up telling kids about it at school. But yeah, I think that the big thing is just take a couple. You just got to focus on a couple kids and really pour into them. And I feel like they'll take that to wherever, that's what happened to me, so.
Yeah, I mean, and similar. I think we gotta view kids in a different way. Like, we're not waiting for them to get to a certain stage and all of a sudden they can hear from God or be used by God or have a calling for their life. For me, it was a pretty young age when I got called out by God and went on a journey, and you read the word, and even, David is like, yeah, he's going to be something. He's going to do something because he had a heart for God at a young age. And so we look at certain things, say, oh, it's impossible, or the teaching or this, but when God comes near and when God breaks in and when his kingdom comes forth and people are full of his spirit, whether that's a young kid or whatever, I think that's when things begin to happen. And we know it's not going to be a program. It's not going to be a plan. Like, we're not going to implement this. Okay, if we get this Jesus club in all the schools, then we win, right? Like, yes, that would be amazing, but we need more than that. There's got to be something more than that where God does things that can't happen, So, and thank goodness there are, godly teachers in these places, which are facing difficult challenges every day. But we just have to look at it like in any type. I don't want to call it a mission field. It almost seems weird to do that, but the same way that we look at North City and it's really difficult. There's challenges, there's history, there's problems. We got to be able to say, well, if God could do something there, he could do it in the school, or he could do it with this group of young people, or he could use a youth ministry, or he could use these other things.
Yeah, I think that in the history of it, I saw in Freedom, I saw some of the pictures from your youth night a couple Fridays ago. That was really, really powerful stuff. And I was thinking about that as I was trying to think about what God's going to do. Like, is it going to be in the church? Is it going to be youth lock-ins? Is it going to be this kind of thing? Or is it going to move to the school? I remember when I first got born again and I was going to some church on the Rock Road, and they told me there was like a Jesus, like you said, a club, right? So it was the Good News Club, and it met after school, and I went a couple times to teach these, like, it was like first grade through fifth grade or whatever. You give them little stories, Bible stories. They sing Bible, songs and different things. And I was like, they're doing this in school. Like, I got so pumped up and so excited.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, all these kids are gonna get saved and share Jesus. Well, the club got cut down, I believe, because satanic groups were going after it, saying that there needs to be an equal club.
Yeah.
And they were trying to put the Satan clubs in the school, saying if you're doing the Jesus club, we should have the right to do the Satan club. And so they were like, well, forget it. We're just not going to do any clubs. Thankfully, they weren't like, let's bring the Satan club. At the same time, you want to see the gospel saved. But when I think of revival, I don't think it's going to be one of those two things. I don't think that we're necessarily going to be drawn just to the church freedom, where the only time we can see youth get saved or set free is if we're offering some sort of special event for them, or I think that the fire of God, I'm hoping, is not only going to come through the people who are getting delivered and set free and healed, but they're going to take it home to their kids, and their kids are going to take it to school or wherever they're going, right? Yeah. And we're going to see some sort of like youth revival that we may not even have a hand in, right? We're not even going to have a touch it. We're going to hear about these teenagers doing something across town, and we're going to be like, oh my gosh, look at what God's doing, right?
Yeah. No, like that, and that's the big thing. Like, I know with the Pray for Lou, the way we've talked about it, we pray and we go. It's the fact that, hey, like, whatever we do with a youth night, we gotta be like, hey, look, it's more than beyond just this setting. Like, being a believer, being on fire for Jesus is not just meant for a Sunday service. Right. And that's one of the things I've just tried to really lately just really push into my kids too is Andy Stanley has a quote. I think it's like, it says, one of the greatest contributions you'll make to the kingdom is not what you do but who you raise. So I'm just being like, okay, man, if we get them in the church front, I get them on the home front, hopefully they'll carry that out to the street and the neighborhood that they're in, because there's obviously kids in my neighborhood that don't believe, and it's not like I expect all these kids are going to go to my youth night. I didn't go to a youth night, so that's not how I was.
I went to
I got saved.
Lock-ins and stuff, right? They used to do lock-ins.
I think I went to one lock-in. I was the kid that got in trouble with the lock-ins.
Oh yeah, because that was for me. Like, I don't know, that was where you got to kiss girls and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
that's pretty much what happened.
I think I must have been at the wrong.
I
was at the wrong lock-in, man.
You should have been at the right lock-in.
I was at the wrong lock-in.
Holding hands and kissing. That was like the first introduction.
I was, how much pizza can I eat?
Yeah, I was gonna say that Brooke thing of like, hey, he can eat a lot. That really worked at a lock-in.
I'm like, I'm eating as much pizza, and I'm gonna be the volleyball champs tonight.
You had plans to crush all the girls in ping pong, and you weren't worried about let's go out in the hallway and make out. Oh, that's too bad. But I think that like, they get a bad rap, but I think you can do things, because I saw all those salvations and stuff, all those kids coming forward, freedom. And what was that like for you? Being able to be used to minister in such a way, because it's not often. Like, I work at a church. We have a youth group. We don't see things like that all the time, and I haven't seen it in any other churches that I've been to. So what you experienced on Friday is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I'm not gonna lie. It was like 63 kids that came to attendance, and 33 gave their life.
Oh my gosh!
So it was just like for half of those kids to even come up, and whether or not those kids have made that same salvation thing before, it's the fact that they were in a setting in front of a bunch of their peers, which is what the goal is, right? Is that them in front of their friends, they'd be willing to step forward and say, hey, I'm a believer in Christ. Yeah. So I think it was just a powerful thing. I was wrecked. I was falling on the side. I was like, man. But the thing that really got me is, always the first group of people, it's the ones that, like, towards the end, that they're still just, like, wrestling it, and then they just finally, they're like, no, like, I'm not going to let the devil have a foothold, and they just step up. And I was like, man, that's it. Those extra one or two, because it wasn't easy for them. And in life, let's be honest, it's not going to be easy for them at school. We, from being seeing the public school and what they got coming on.
Yeah, so I never experienced it outside of going myself. So what are the kids today? Because it's different than when we were little.
Well, my wife, just this past year, before Isaiah and Layla started going to the Christian school, my wife was in this diversity, whatever it is, diversity union for leaders or whatever. So she went there, and she was just trying to listen, just seeing what they're talking about. And the whole plan was, how can we make all these other kids feel welcome that identify as this, this, and this. And my wife's just like,
Oh my gosh.
why are we focused on this? Like, our school reading level is not where it needs to be, but we're
They can't
focused
read
on it. It's like, let's focus on how can we educate these kids better? What can we do? It's just like any of these subjects that they're talking about. It's like, man, is that necessary right now? If you want to address it later on in life, that's like, I don't know about you guys, but I did with the sex education class. Wasn't until like I was a freshman in high school.
They can't read a book, but they need to know what signs on the bathroom door, right? Oh my gosh, that's
like,
crazy.
So yeah, man. But yeah, I mean, they're getting attacked on that front. Just trying to understand identity, because that's the biggest thing.
Oh yeah.
So and they see quiet kids. And these group of kids, for me, that was one, my son thing. He's like very quiet to himself. So, they see another kid like that and they immediately just try and bring him into that setting. But not only that, just, I would get like a email every day saying, hey, please remind your kids not to bring a gun to school. And I'm like,
what?
Yeah. And it's like, okay, so
Like
does that mean another kid brought another gun? Because if you keep reminding me, that makes me believe that and this is at middle school, Hazelwood West Middle. Oops, sorry. Drop. But yeah. But yeah, this is at a middle school that I'm just like, man, if you're constantly reminding me, that lets me know that somebody got caught with a gun at school today, or else you wouldn't even constantly have to remind it. So it's crazy what's going on. Nothing about what I
How
imagine.
does that make you feel as a parent when you get an email like that?
Bro, as a youth pastor, it's crazy, because I'm like, man, the subjects that we're talking about, like, I know we've had these conversations. Oh, well, we don't talk about this with middle school youth because they're not dealing with it. Oh yeah, they are now. Everything they're hearing now, and it's just crazy. Just kids on Instagram that I'll see that I know from the church, that they'll have videos that are in there. I'm like, oh my gosh, why are you doing this? Why are you have this in the background? Why do you think this is good? Like, it's just a whole new world. But those kids too, man, if the one thing about them is because they have this source like social media, man, if you can get them ablaze for Jesus, man, they will totally, be sold out, putting it on their Instagram, putting it on everything, and it will end up doing more than what we probably did. It's like everybody can be a televangelist now, you know, as a kid, if we just set them ablaze, and all they need is one encounter, man.
Yeah.
So.
Got anything?
I don't have too much. I'm just listening to this conversation.
Yeah, so
enjoy
I'll
it.
keep going. I just want to make sure that you get a chance to chime in here.
Thankfully, I'm not getting the same emails that Freedom's getting and dealing with the same stuff.
I remember, talk about social media in the schools, right? So the reason we decided, well, for one, we've been praying for a long time saying, God, we want to put our kids in a Christian school. We want them to just have that, but there came a point where Maya's about to enter school and we didn't have the money. I was like, look, God, I've just trusted you. I've been praying for you, and God eventually showed up with a new job, and we were making different kind of money, and so we're able to do different things. And it's a glory to God, testimony to God. But like right before that time, right before we get this opportunity to really shift, it's the summer 2020, Black Lives Matter is happening, and my school that I graduated high school from, in the school district that Maya would be going into, was having protests outside the school, and kids and teachers had signs that said, all cops must die.
Oof.
And I was on the school Instagram page, and a school sponsored protest. I was like, I can't send my kids to this. Regardless of what you think about the racial things that were happening at the time, like, all cops must die. Like, this is what we're promoting, death at the school. Like, that's not something I want to be signed up for,
Yeah, man, it's crazy just to see like what the schools push, like what they promote. It's like, man, if someone said anything about Jesus, it's like immediately taken down. It's like, no, you can't do that. Like, I remember, at the school that Isaiah was going at one time, they told the kids, oh, just write about something. And Isaiah, wrote a paper about Noah's Ark.
Yeah. And
then like the next time Isaiah wrote something about like David and Goliath, and they said, well, you can't write those stories anymore. And then so I asked that. So he came back to me, he said, Dad, they told me that I couldn't write that anymore. And I said, was it a specific thing that they told you to write about? And he said, no. And I said, okay, well then you can write about it. I said, if they're going to put it on a specific topic, or they say you can write about whatever, then you can write about that. But that's how it is though. They're worried about offending everyone else except for a Christian. And it's like, it's insane, man. Just the stuff that the schools are pushing, man. Yeah.
What I love about kids, though, and I think the word talks about this, like, train up your kids in the way they'll stay with it. And for me, like, I've experienced, and I don't know if you guys have, like, the kids will come home and, like, they'll know some verse that you didn't teach them, or like they'll say something about Jesus, or like tell you a story and you'd be like, I didn't know that. Like, like if you ever had this experience where they're like telling you, no, that's not how it happened, Daddy. This is actually what happened. Jonah went in the belly of a whale. Oh, it's like it's all these different stories they got.
Yeah, that Caden is always quoting verses or telling me stories or just what he learned, and you're just like, you're talking about something super random, and then the story pops out. You're like, whoa, where did that come from? Mm-hmm. And it brings great joy. For us, the reason why we put him in a Christian school is because what we're talking about is like we're like on the front lines in the ministry battle constantly, and to think about have to be on the front lines battling the school constantly and all that, it was like, man, that's overwhelming. That's a lot. And not everyone is in the position that we are to be able to put their kids in a Christian school or environment. So I feel for those parents that don't, there's tons of parents that don't have a choice in this, and it's super challenging.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Like, I don't want to say, like, hey, I know it's easy, guys. Just go put them in private school. Like, that's not an answer.
Yeah. I want to make sure that's out there. Because
it almost wasn't an answer for me, so I was almost going to have to walk that road, I know you've been through it, so tell us about it.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was definitely a step out in faith, because I was like, man, I mean, because I went from working in corporate America to last year, like I was officially a part-time position at the church. So it's like I'm making like a fourth of what I made. Mm-hmm. It's almost like I'm back in the mission field. It's like, man, I need to raise support. I need to put out a support letter. But it's like, I'm like, how am I going to do this? And it's kind of that thing that you were talking about in the last video, man, is just really just saying, hey, you know what? I don't have to ask 1,000 people. Just got to trust God. I mean, if his word says that he's going to do it, I'm blessed going in, blessed going out. I'm going to believe that. I'm going to hold him to his word. And every time I'm praying, hey, God, you said in your word,
that's right.
And it's your will, it's your bill. So I'm trusting that you're going to provide for this. And, it's just been working out, man. I've gotten just crazy blessed out of just different places. I'm like, oh, gosh, thank you.
Well, tell us a story, man. Give us a blessing.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, the first month, obviously, that you have to pay for the school, it's like, all
deposit
that.
sometimes.
Yeah, deposit, all
this.
And it was just like,
supplies.
Yeah, somebody was like, hey, just find out how we can contribute money to just you, because, they have a little donation thing where you just put into the church. And so I was like, okay, just put Ochoa lights. That's what we tell everybody. So people were just wondering that. So to find out, they're like, oh, yeah, your first month's already covered. I was like, all right, awesome. So that was just super cool, and it was just.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah, man. It was just.
Your smile's not even big enough. I wish somebody paid for my. Excuse me, folks out there.
But yeah, dude, it was just like, because it was, obviously it's scary, to make that big leap. But, I do believe in, some people dispute this, but I believe that because of the things that God's using me for, that I'm going to expect more opposition from the devil's going to try and do everything that he can. We've seen it anytime we go harder, not that we don't go hard and pray for Lou anytime, but it's like, whenever it gets close to that time, everyone's got a car issue.
Yeah, cars break down.
Dude, Kurt is the master of the car breakdown.
Dude, I get a call from Andrew had a car issue. You had a car issue. I had a car issue at one time. It was like all during like the like a month before Pray for Lou. I'm like, what is going on?
I laid hands on Andrew's car and it broke down the next day.
Yeah. John is so tired of getting a Marco Polo or text message from me. He's like, I'm like, dude, my muffler just rusted in 2 pieces. Dude, I just blew an ignition coil.
Wow.
Hey, man, you'll never believe this, but this just happened.
Dude, you had somebody roll their car down the street. It was in park or something. It gets out of park, rolls down the street, and hits you from behind. I've never heard
of
it.
It got sandwiched.
Yeah. It hit my car into my other car. Yeah. It was like Pinball Wizard.
Wow.
Yeah, and then there was no insurance, so that was a whole nother
goodness.
thing.
Life of ministry, isn't it fun? We gotta hope that the money shows up. We gotta hope that our things don't broke up. And by the way, we're also under the most attack because we're going after what God wants for us.
Bro.
Yeah, and for me, bring it on. Like I'll take on anything. But
don't say that. You didn't hear that from me.
But I'll take on anything.
Operate at your own faith level, John. Operate at your own faith level.
But when it hits my family or my kids, that's the hardest.
Oh, yeah, bro.
Oh, for sure.
Because usually you're in the thick of it. You're on the front lines. You're battling. Or it's either, oh, man, this just happened today and God came through and it's so amazing. And then something at home just, your kitchen sink is leaking, which maybe mine is right now.
Bro, I think that was like one of the biggest like shifts in my mind is that, from doing missions, like Kurt said in the last one, man. And if you guys haven't watched it, watch the other video. But it's just that thought process, like, man, it's so easy when it's just us out there. I'm like, oh yeah, God can provide. It's one person, But then when we add our family and we're like, oh Lord, are you going to be able to do it? It's like as if it's harder for him to do 4 more people than it was for him to do us. And it's just, man, it was just been like, man, God, same God that, provided me to go to Fiji, provided me to go to Brazil. Like, dude, if he paid for those things, dude, he can totally pay for, my kid's school.
It's easy. Like, I feel like our faith level when we first get born again and we're first, like, driving into what God has for us, like, we are at the top level. Like, our cup is so full of faith. Like, God's going to pay for everything. He's going to pay for my friends. He's going to pay for, like.
Our feet aren't even on the mountain. Like, we're hovering above the mountain. We're so excited. Like,
yes,
woo!
Come on.
But then you get in the midst of it. And, like, for us, we've been in years, almost a decade now I've been in ministry. And you're like, it becomes harder to stay up there that long, when you've gone through seasons of having to wait for something really big,
and you take some hits along the way and get knocked down,
disappointment,
and you had the vision and you went forward and you had the word and you had the scripture and you had the T-shirt and you had the website, and then I always like to say it's crickets. It just seems like nothing, or it's so hard when you see things so clearly and your heart is so passionate for something. And it seems like just no one gets it. No one cares. It's like coming home from work and telling your spouse about something amazing. And they're like, yeah, that's great. But, it's been crazy here and I don't have time to listen to this, or the kids are screaming, or we got to make dinner and we got to get the kid to practice. It's like, no, I need you for 2 minutes to hear this. Or vice versa. I come home and, Brooke's been with the kids all day and she's like, I need just a couple minutes to share this with you. And I'm just like, yeah, we can't, I got to do something else right now or whatever, but that's how ministry is. It's like, wow, no one gets it.
Yeah, man. It's definitely when you come home, especially all those hype moments, like, we've been having these prayer nights at our church now, probably like a year and a half, because one of the big things with, the Pray for Lou thing, and it's really just hit me lately is just that, hey, part of the vision was that it wasn't like going to just be, all of us getting together on this day, is that the hopes are that, individuals, churches would continue to prayer walk, or that would start prayer nights and do this thing. So like over the last like year and a half, we just had some crazy prayer nights. And I'm like, coming home and I'm like, oh my gosh, Tosh, you're not going to believe what happened at prayer night, dude. We were wrecked. This kid got delivered. And then she's like, hey, Layla needs hope with her schoolwork. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? He manifested in front of us.
He's like, but there's still diapers that need to be changed.
Yeah, stuff needs to happen.
Someone's got to pack the lunch.
Yeah.
We don't know where the clothes are.
Did you take care of this bill? Did you do that? Did you check your email?
Yeah.
Did you just look at the schedule? I'm like, all right, yep, okay.
Life goes on. And it's just like, I think that, the Bible talks about this, the end days, people are going to be getting married, having businesses. It's like, it's going to be so normal, but I want to go back to like our faith level for a second, because you were mentioning, like you got to meet your faith level, like, but it's so easy to pray for things, but also like lower your expectations a little bit. I think, cause I've been reading this, the story of Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah with my kids the last couple nights, and
perfect time.
Yeah, I know, right? And Abraham's like, what about 50? 45. 40. Like 35.
Negotiate. Can I get a 45, 45.
Exactly. And isn't it like us to do the same thing with God sometimes?
Yeah.
I mean, like, we're negotiating, like, hey man, I need this money for this bill, but just anything would really be helpful, just I want to hear a word from you, God, but how about just say something? Like there's just times of that, especially in long seasons of ministry. Yeah, man,
I heard this one sermon one time, and this guy was talking about how you're like, you put in your destination to a GPS, or like you put in your GPS, whatever the destination is. And then he was talking about for, when you get close to that destination, he goes, turn right, turn left, go 1 mile. He said, but there's a point in time when you're just riding and your GPS doesn't say anything to you. And I've just been on those paths where I'm like, okay, God, I'm not hearing anything from you. And instead of just thinking like, okay, I'm missing out on something, just being like, hey, you know what, I'm on the right path. Because that's what I feel like right now. It's just like, man, I'm just on the right path. I'm not going to hear this just crazy word from the Lord until like right around Pray for Lou time, because that's always when the Lord just wants to speak. But yeah, just, I think that's the big thing, just trusting that, hey, like if we're not hearing him instantly, just know that you're doing the right thing. But it can be a challenge sometimes, because you especially when it's like, okay, the rent is 2 months behind, the mortgage is. Lord, I don't know how I'm going to tell my wife that I wasn't able to pay that bill. but then it's like all of a sudden it pops up and you're like, what the like, dude, that's all I had to say to you is just to say Lord, like, you know. But it's that reminder, man. You know, with every testimony, you know, or with every testimony there's a test.
Yeah, you know, I would think that you know, people would listen to that and be like, oh, his rent's behind, or you know, we're using credit cards and things like that for ministry. It's like that God can't be in there. I don't agree. I don't agree. I think that you can go through seasons like, look, you know, Job lost everything. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe he was bartering, you know, for his family's you know, food at the end. You know, they don't mention that in the book, but you know, I think for any of us, like when someone's like, oh, well, that, you know, might misjudge what we're going through because, you know, we share stories like our rent's behind, you know, like I think that can be tough for somebody to listen to and be encouraged that like, is God really for them? Are they doing the right thing? Are they stepping out in faith and doing what God actually wants them to do?
I feel like in that GPS analogy, my life is always recalculating.
Right.
Recalculating.
Recalculate.
It's like
wrong turn.
you're gonna get there, but it's recalculating. Yeah. It's recalibrating. It's, you know, we can. It's getting to the right place at the right time with the right motives.
That's good.
You know what I mean? Because the things we want to see, the things we've prayed for, the things we've labored for, the things we've cried for, the things we've sat down for hours and written about or whatever, when they actually come, we want Jesus to get that glory, you know? So he's always like recalculating our heart and recalibrating it as well. And just that trust and that dependence and that faith walk and that journey. Like, what's weird is, as we're talking about this, it's almost easier for me to trust like Jesus is going to do amazing things in our city than it is for him to pay this bill over here or to pay for my kid's school.
Yeah.
Like the practical, like low level, tangible stuff. I can have faith way up here for all these other things, but sometimes over here he's like, no, you got to like trust me as a father. You got to trust me with what I've entrusted you with. Right? Like we have these amazing kids and amazing families.
Yeah.
And also I think part of it is we get to bring our families into this journey and share. I don't know, I'm still learning how to do it, but just share with them, like as a family, we're on mission and this is how God's providing. And sometimes I will have the kids, hey, pray today that God would, you know, provide. And I won't always like go into the details of what it is or what we need or pray for this, but just bring the kids into it to know that, hey, God's a provider. God's with us and he's for us. And this is my main thing. God, if you're calling me to do this, then somehow I trust you to come through. And then if you don't, then maybe I got to evaluate where things are at.
Yeah.
To kind of respond to what you were saying, I think a lot of times what people just naturally, when they hear that, oh, someone's behind, is they feel like, oh, somebody's not, you know, right in line with God, which, you know, like you said, there's many stories in the Bible that aren't like that. Now, do I believe that God wants people blessed? Yes, and I believe that at some point in time, I'm not gonna ever have to like worry about my bills being behind. I'm gonna be able to pay other people's bills. I believe that wholeheartely, that He's gonna eventually get me there. And it's not like a prosperity thing. It's just that, like, look, I know that right now I'm just in this season where you know, we're in the fire, man.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm being refined in every area and saying, okay, look, you say you trust me, you know, but do you trust me in this area? You know, because like you said, there's so many. It's like, oh, dude, we're gonna go in the city. We're gonna change it. The murder count's gonna go down, as if like that's hard, like as if that's easier than paying our bill. But like, oh yeah, like come on, just whatever your mortgage is. Oh Lord, God, you gotta come through. This is a hard one. Like no, changing St. Louis versus a mortgage payment, that's nothing to him. Both of them are on the same level, you know. But yeah,
I'll hear people say over the years, you know, like, well, you got to get a job. You know, even Paul was a tent maker. How do we know that Paul wasn't playing backup? He's like, I got to make some tents. I got to pay the guy who gave me the boat ride a couple weeks ago. I'm a little behind, you know? And so they just don't share that in the book. You got to read between the lines a little bit. But I think that anybody who's gone through a walk with God, it's not zero to Joel Osteen. I don't think that that's the course that most of us take. Instead, you know, we just walk out in faith and you take the next step of faith, glory, glory. And for us, you know, we look at the little things in our lives and it's easy, it's hard, so it depends on the day, right? but when we think about the city, and that's what the show is all about, change in St. Louis, it's like all three of us have been consistent in our efforts to just really be feet on the ground for God. You know, I mean, literally in Kurt's case, you know, walking around every Saturday, you know, and so often I have seen freedom at every single event I have been to for the last 7 years, and I'm like, I see you at stuff I don't even expect you to be at. Like, there was like a school stuff, your kids weren't even going to the school, and we were doing a Christmas night where they were singing Christian songs, and there's freedom. And like, I'll walk down the street, oh, there's freedom, and he's at the things with Kurt, he's at the things with Kevin, he's at the things everywhere. There is Jesus. I see you at, man. So how do you have the time to just be like, you know what? I'm committed to every single thing that is happening in St. Louis for Jesus.
Well, the crazy thing was, like, man, before, like, I really had kid number 3 or even kid number 2 for that matter, like, you know, I used to break dance and, like, I used to compete. So I would go out of town, you know, to Chicago, Colorado, like, for all these competitions. Like, you know, that was a big passion for me. I would train like 3 nights a week. So now it's like, you know, it's like to tell my wife, it's like, man, like, it was okay for me to do this, and obviously it's going to be okay for this. And I think that she just got so used to, you know, supporting me in my passion and let me doing things, you know, in that area. Now, obviously, sometimes I know that I have to be like, okay, you know, family is my first ministry. I have to make sure that everything's cool. So I check with her, and just like you said, we do the balance of like, hey, do you want to go do something tonight? If not, do you mind? You know, so usually those things that I'm at, you know, it's just pretty much like, okay, yeah, I know this is something that you want to do. Because part of the, you know, my big vision is, you know, just like Kurt, is just I want to see everybody united. And the more people that I can connect with, the more opportunity to, you know, hey, do you ever need help with somebody, you know, teaching evangelism so that we can, you know, so that you can go out to the streets, because the whole purpose is to get the gospel to the streets. So, I mean, that's the main reason why I go to those things. But, you know, the big thing is just, you know, my wife's just been supportive, because in the past she saw it whenever I wasn't a, you know, full-time believer, we'll say.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
The old freedom.
The old freedom, man. Yeah.
I think that it's commitment. Me and Kurt, I don't know if we've talked about this on air or not, Kurt, but the idea of like mixing family and ministry, right? And so for, you know, you're sharing that sort of like she supports you, and my wife super supports me, because most of the time you see me, I don't bring the kids, I don't bring my wife, and it's not because she doesn't want to be there, it's just because all these parachurch ministries are having events that don't have childcare, and Kurt does it. Kurt just brings them in, and you pile it up Irish style and Mozambique style. We're just gonna you know, scream here on the floor all night long, you know. But for you, freedom, you said the balance. I think that's important. I think because it's easy for, especially, and maybe for not for you guys, but I feel like I've seen this in both of you guys, so I'm speaking for you a little bit, that like it can be where we think, we got to put Jesus first. We got to get this done. We got to get this thing for God done. We got to get this revival done. We've been called to ministry. We got to pray for somebody. We got to do, like, it becomes so investive as far as what we want to do with our time, that sometimes we can unknowingly, you know, put our relationships sort of in a back burner, or, you know, not focus so much on doing the dishes as we want to focus on getting in the streets.
Yeah, I think there was, for me personally, there was a season where I call it more of a exploration season, where I was similar to freedom. I think we both had our different journeys at different times, where I need to just find out what's going on. And to do that, I have to show up a bunch of places to engage with people. And I was doing that more of to figure out what was happening. And then, okay, what am I called to do? And now that I'm actually doing what I'm called to do and building what I'm called to build, I don't go out as much unless I really feel like I need to be at a certain thing. And so there was a season that Brooke understood and kind of blessed me to be out there. But now I'm very cautious or thoughtful of my time, where I try not to be out at especially evening events. I want to be there to put the kids to bed. I want to be there to know how their day was. I want to be there to hang out with my wife, and I don't have to be at these other things when before I needed to be, to build relationships, to build the bridges, and to network. But now that I mean, obviously there's still relationships to build and people to meet, but it's a little bit different now, where instead of me going to other people's things, I'm pulling people into what I'm doing, and pulling them into my world and my life a little bit more, or my schedule or my rhythm. And so, but again, I'm the same as freedom. It's like, oh man, I got these 2 things I really need to do this week, and I do them, but I want to make sure my wife is like, oh, I need some space. I need to get out and hang with some friends. Like, I don't want to watch kids tonight. You put them to bed. I'm going to go do this thing, right?
That's real. That's real life.
It's a super real thing. I was reading something on Facebook that kind of explains it well. You know, like a mom all day long is needed, and always her name is called, and it's It's just like this overstimulation of always someone needing you from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. So it's like they just need some space and no one bothering them and just get out. And so I'm really like, we couldn't go do what we do if we didn't have supportive wives.
Oh, yeah.
Like it wouldn't
100%.
it wouldn't work. Our home lives would be a mess. It would be turmoil, and anything that happens out there wouldn't be worth it. It wouldn't be worth it. It's hard enough, when you have to do something, but there's something at home you need to be there for, and something's going on, you can't be there, man. I really feel torn in those situations. I maybe didn't used to, but I know what's important. You know what I mean? And it goes back, I think you said it, like, Jesus is building what Jesus wants to build.
Yeah.
And we get to be a part of it. But I'm thankful that I don't have to be in all of it. You know what I mean? There might have been a point where I wanted to be in all of it. Now I'm exactly the opposite. I'm like, I want to do my part, and that's it.
Yeah.
Just let me do my part.
I think that's definitely just been a process for me too at one point, because I was just like, oh, dude, I got to do everything for the kingdom. Oh, they're doing outreach. I got to be at that outreach. I got to be at this outreach, versus just being like, okay, like, I don't have to be in and everything. If God has me, especially right now, just with the church, man, I was like, okay, God, you brought me in this position in the church. Like, how can I impact the area that I'm at? And I think, that it's so important for me to just really say, okay, Freedom, what is the church doing right now? What's going on in North County? Is there anything that's going on in North County? Okay, because that's where I have you positioned. You haven't, your house is here, your church is here, your kids go to school in this area. What are you doing there? And at one point in time, I think it was really exhausting my wife, because she was like, you're going to this night, you're going to this night, you're going to this night. Are you going to be home? And I was in that discovering time, just like, what is it? What's my lane? And, I was trying to do everything. If there was something that the church needed help with, I was like, oh, I need to do this, versus, what they say, staying in your donuts. Like, that's not my donut. That's not what,
that's a good term. I've never heard. I like donuts.
We would say that's not my hula hoop.
Yeah, it's not your hula hoop.
Yeah, the first church I the first church I went to after becoming a born-again believer, I signed up for everything. I was mowing lawns. I was doing Bible studies. I was teaching the new beginners class. I was just going to everything they had. Oh, women's night, what do you need? You need me to sweep the floors afterwards? Like, it was just like, I wanted to be in that world. And, I wasn't, I didn't have 4 kids then, but, you go through seasons of life. And I think for all of us too, like, there will be a time when the kids are grown or the kids are out of the house where our season of ministry looks different. Maybe we're doing either more things or we're doing different, bigger things in leadership, so
traveling more, all those things.
Yeah, dead air. I just think, in so many situations, it's like we've tried to be a jack of all trades versus a master of one. It's like, hey, God, what is the assignment that you have for me? How can I fine tune it and just like really be engulfed in that? Right now, like I have technically 2 roles in the church. I'm doing the youth pastor position, but also I'm on staff evangelist. So it's like, okay, how do I still do the outreach ministry? I'm like, okay, well, hold on a second. These kids, who's to say that I can't use these kids to parent, combine these things? Like, they can still be involved in outreach. And, it's just finding that, like, hey, what is my assignment, God? What is it that you've called me to do? And how can I be better at that versus trying to be like, okay, I'm good at this. I'm good at this. I'm good at this. Let me do all of these things.
Yeah. What you just got hired on as an employee of the church, right?
Yeah.
And so what's that transition been like? Because we all served for years before getting a paycheck, from a church specifically, and that may not be your long-term plan. So what's it been like for you?
Oh man, it's definitely a learning experience. I say it this way because before, whenever I would do evangelism, it's like you're trying to, not necessarily that the church is not trying to build a kingdom, but it's like, okay, what kind of, with any positions, like, okay, what's the fruit? Have you produced any fruit that's beneficial to the house? So it's like, okay, like, have I helped the population of the church? Have I been going into the area, and like I said, North County, where where God's placed me? Have I been there more than I've been in a city where because it's like the Judea, Samaria, the ends of the earth. Like, there is that Judea. You have to be in your home, like, too. Are you making an impact on where you're at? So just really trying to focus more on getting that mindset of like, okay, look, be in the area that I'm in as well. Because before, whenever I first got saved, and I like immediately went into missions, just like Kurt. It's like missions. So it's like I've always been overseas, then after the overseas.
Pray for my friends here who love to go bathroom in weird places.
Well, I think, dude, to be honest, too, I think it's just the hunger thing, man. Yeah. To be honest, in America, we're a little bit spoiled.
Yeah.
Not a little bit spoiled. We're extremely spoiled, man. We're extremely spoiled. So we have like healthcare, we have like food pantries. I even think of, the food pantry. I'm like, well, these people get to go to this. Like they could just drive to a food bank and get food. In these other countries, they don't have any hope except for to believe that somebody's going to come through. And then when they find out that God is the one that can come through, it's like, dude, that's where you see the craziest things. And I think that if America could come to that position that, like, look, they come to with that hunger, like I won't, like I can't live unless I have God in my life. The only way that I'm going to truly live my full potential is if I have God in my life. Then we'll see America see the same things that they'll see overseas.
Yeah, so how do we get to a point? I mean, I don't know if we can. I mean, here in the States, without something radically shifting to where, our quality of life is drastically different and puts people on their knees, right?
Sometimes
we have a pandemic and we're still doing all right. We're still
But no, but I honestly think, man, that like when that happened, not that was like the God sent that,
Right, yeah.
and some people believe that. I'm not going to try and debate that thing on there, but I believe that because of that, like so many people that they couldn't have the money to go to the grocery store, and then all of a sudden, so many churches were doing food banks.
It was like
it's
every
everybody.
corner.
It was like we were all agreeing on something.
Yes.
It's like I don't know what they believe, but hey, let's do a food bank.
Yeah.
So it was like cool, and like people were coming to the church to get a need felt, or a need filled, and it's like okay, they're actually seeing tangible proof that God is working through people. Because I don't think the people that I went to, at least at our church and some of the food banks that I saw, that it wasn't like they were like mean people, so it was like they were seeing the love of God, and it's that goodness of God that leads people to repentance. So I just feel like, people experiencing the goodness are seeing people without a mask and being like, dude, why are these people not wearing a mask? What's up? Without like going into this big thing. It's like, okay, well, I know God is a healer, so I know God is a protector. And it's, I think that a lot of good came from, I know that sounds weird, but a lot of good came from the pandemic.
No, sure.
For me, the reason I'm doing anything I'm doing, or a lot of what I'm doing, because I went somewhere else and tasted and I saw of what God could do.
That's a good point.
The things he was talking about. And my heart was like, if God can do it here in Mozambique, Africa, he's going to do it in St. Louis, and he's going to use me. And I'm going to, when you see people in America hungry for God, when we don't have to be, we have everything else, we could take care of ourselves. People have to experience it. They have to know what's possible. I used to say it like this. When I went and saw all these things and God moving, and it's not just about the external things. It's a love and a passion for Jesus above all things. I realized, wow, man, I've tasted of something I didn't know of. And when you come back, people are kind of like, it's like they're going to McDonald's and they're getting the Big Mac, and they love it and they think it tastes great. And you're over here saying, no, like, you got to try this.
Yeah.
Come eat of this. Come eat this delicious food from this amazing steakhouse that you've never had. You didn't know it exists, and it's been right here the whole time. And then they eat it and they realize, wait, this doesn't taste quite as good. There's something more I can have in my relationship, in my pursuit, and what God can do. And we don't have to wait, is the thing, for a pandemic or this or that. We have the opportunity to draw near to God right now. And pursue him with everything that we are. And when you do that, nothing else satisfies. David said, one day in your courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere. But in most of our churches, we don't spend 1 minute in his courts. And we definitely don't get to the Holy of Holies. We don't get to that sacred, that intimate, that worship where we're joining with heaven, where all of heaven is crying, holy, holy, holy. So I think we're just satisfied, and we haven't seen and we haven't tasted. But there are a people and there are things happening where God is stirring something in us for what's to come. Because again, I keep saying, in all of our efforts, like, if tomorrow everyone we evangelize got saved, or if tomorrow in every one of our prayer gatherings God answered everything we're praying, like, we wouldn't be ready. Like, we're never going to be ready, but on one hand, like, we have to get ready for what he wants us to do.
Yeah, you talk about Africa, and I've seen the fields of evangelistic revival that have taken place, and hundreds of thousands of people giving their life to the Lord in like one thing, and you're like, oh my gosh,
bonkies.
Will I ever? Well, even like For His Glory has done stuff recently. You see 400,000 people out there, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's amazing to see that just at one time, see that many people anywhere. Period. Second, it's for Jesus, and Jesus is doing things there that you don't often see here on the streets of St. Louis as far as healings and recoveries and things like that. But I'm believing that God's going to do something very big here in St. Louis.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fire. We're going to be a fire starter that's sort of going to ripple out into the other states, you know. And what does it got to look like though? Because I know I'm not going to be able to guess how God's going to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like he's just going to show up one day and all of a sudden things are just weird now. Like
I don't even care what it looks like. I just want to be there.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of it. And I want to be on the front end and the front lines, preparing the way. You know, like John the Baptist, we're going to prepare the way. And then when the Lamb of God comes, behold, there he is. Yeah. He's the one that takes away the sins of the world. He's the one you're looking for. He's the one that matters. And we do know that prayer and intercession, these things have always preceded God showing up in whatever way he wants to, you know. And I it's also interesting because, you know, I lead prayer every Wednesday at the House of Prayer here for over 3 years. Every Wednesday morning, and for 2 hours we worship and we pray, and Freedom's been a part of that and led some of those with us. And lately, even though I'm praying for stuff and I'm praying for murder rates to go down and I'm praying for all these things, lately I've found myself just like wanting to worship Jesus, just adore Jesus, just be with him, and just not even ask him for anything, but just to be near to him, just to be at his feet, like the story of Mary and Martha. You know, one is so busy getting everything ready so it can be perfect while he's there. Yeah. But then she's not actually with him when he's there in his presence, you know? And I don't want to be the one so busy doing the stuff that I miss
getting
actually.
The chairs out of the back room.
Exactly.
You know,
like we got to sweep the floor.
Somebody's got to do it.
We got to make Jesus' favorite meal. He's in town, and we got to make his bed, and he's sleeping here tonight. And it's like, what if he just wants us to be with him? And then when we're with him, he's going to say, hey, look over there in that neighborhood. I love those people. Or look in this place. I want you to do that. Or, hey, Freedom, look at these kids down the street, man. Just go love on them. This is how I want you to do it. You know what I mean? So I think we just have an invitation to a deeper relationship. Yeah. Because what do we want to give people? Yeah. Like, what do we, if we say revival and we want people to know Jesus, like, how do we want them to know him? Do we want them to just know like these rules and these thoughts and these ideas about him? Or do we want them to like,
well, I think I don't speak for you guys, but what I want is to understand that there can be absolute change in your life, positive change, because that's what happened to me. It's like, I went
transformation.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect word, you know, and the Bible even uses that word, you know. So, I mean, for me, going from somebody who didn't want to be alive to somebody who wants to be alive every day and help everybody, you know, like, and like love on people and hug them and kiss them and, you know, be like, all right, dude, there's hope for your tomorrow, because I had no hope and now there's hope. And, you know, that's what I want them to experience. You know, I don't want them to experience a church service. Like, come to my church real quick and I'll show you 3 songs and in a message and
that's what I'm talking about. We get to give away what we've been given. Yeah. But people need to be given, like, we have everything in Jesus, right? I'm not saying like he's insufficient, but in these moments when we're with him, he does something in us so he can do something through us and we can go give it away. Yeah, that's right. Like I don't get to go in North City and go through the Romans road, the plan of salvation, and then all of a sudden that person's like, oh man, that's all I need. Like they need a living, tangible, nothing impossible, break into your situation, take someone like Saul who's persecuting Christians and turn them and raise them into an apostle and a missionary, you know? They need to know that what road you were on. Like, it was death and destruction and debt at every turn for you. And the next thing you know, like, I saw the picture you posted a few weeks ago sharing your story, man. It's like, this person looks different. Like, you look different. You probably sounded different. People around you are probably like, man, who is this guy? But if we're just telling some old story that happened to us 20 years ago and like, that is powerful, but like, what happened yesterday? What's happening tomorrow that would compel someone to say, man, I don't know, like, you know God, you know this, God's real to you. Yeah, God's real to you.
Everybody can experience that. That's what the craziest thing is like why we're so excited, because we understand it so tangibly. We can feel it. So we've done it. We've been through this. We know that God is real and he can be in your life and you can experience what we have, which is so much love and hope and peace. And it's different than not having it, because, you know, for each of us, you know, it's like we understand what it's like to be on one side and the other.
Yeah. 100%, man. And it's so funny because when we think of kids, like, how many kids like get this message in church of the fruit of the Spirit? That's how basic it is. It's the fruit of the Spirit of God: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. Like, yeah, all this other stuff's cool with revival. Like, I want to see healings. I want to see thousands of salvation. You know, I want to see people transform. But also, we want the people to experience His Spirit, which that means that every day you're living with peace. Every day you're living with joy. Every day you're living
Sometimes it's nice just to have a good night's sleep.
I know, dude. Just to be able to rest and be like, oh my gosh, I just have so much peace that I can just rest this way. Yeah. Because there's people that are got 1,000 things going on in their mind. you know, and I love in the word where it says we go from glory to glory. So I think that if we constantly have this concept of like it's going to look like the revivals. No, it's like past revivals. Yeah, there might be a formula. Like the prayers, obviously, I think there's no, I don't know of any revival that wasn't birthed out of prayer.
Right.
Like, so that's step one. But like the other stuff, I believe that it's not just going to be these signs. Like all these things are, that's going to be happen. That's part of it. But I think it's just people realizing that they have everyday peace, everyday joy, like that they don't have to, you know, be in depression. Like mental health is probably the biggest thing that everybody talks about now. It's like you don't have to deal with that if you have, you know, the joy of the Lord.
And John, for you, thinking about your story, like you tried everything external. Like
I did everything.
Okay, what can I do? I'm going to put a fence around my life, a guardrail around my life, external. But here's the thing, in revival, when God comes near, he does something on the inside, and all of a sudden, as Freedom said, there's new fruit that manifests because of who's on the inside of you, and then it just begins to happen as you walk it out, and all of a sudden, what used to be, I mean, there's challenges, there's struggles, there's faithfulness, there's, you know, putting on the armor, there's all this stuff, but something happened on the inside that changes, and then people begin to notice that.
Yeah. For me, one of the things, and I don't want to hate on my city here right now, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here because
in order to change, we gotta address some things.
I think about our Cardinals, our famous baseball team that everybody likes to worship around here, you know, and
Baseball heaven.
Baseball heaven. That's a good. That's an interesting term that we use to describe our baseball team. So when I think about what I want to see God do, which is change the reputation of our city of being a place where Ferguson happened and no one wants to go and live there, or being a place where we just have a cool baseball team or an arch to go visit, but literally being a place where, hey, Jesus is there. Let's get in the car and go right now and get what God has for us there, you know, and seeing like Field of Dreams level traffic jams coming into our city, you know, because that's where Jesus is. We're going to go where Jesus is, you know, and that's what I'm expecting to happen, however that looks. But I think that we have to get to a place in our hearts where we would rather see that than Albert Pujols hit 701. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I don't know, in this state, in this time, that's a hard mountain to climb.
No, when I
you went straight for the jugular.
I'm just saying.
I'm going to add to it. A couple of years ago, when the Blues won the Stanley Cup for the first time in 50 years.
Glory.
Yeah, play Gloria.
Yeah,
that wrong glory.
But wrong glory. Seeing all those people in that parade.
Yeah,
I'm like, this is what we need for Jesus.
Yes,
and I think it was during that time they filled the Enterprise Center and Busch Stadium to watch on a screen the hockey game when they won, and I'm like, that's what we need for Jesus.
Yes.
Like this, and he is so much worthier. Then, like, I love sports and I enjoy it all, and I'm glad they bring us together, and I'm glad all that stuff, but, like, Jesus is so much more worthy for something of that magnitude. And then people, you know, they get like, well, it's not about the big event, but if we got that many believers together for something like that, it's crazy. I was just watching this old transformation video that I saw like 20-something years ago about the city in Colombia called Cali and what God did there that took it from a cartel-ridden to the churches uniting in prayer. And I was just blown away watching again for the first time in forever. But they filled stadiums, which the city paid for security, paid for sound, and they prayed through the night the church. 60,000 people. So when that stuff starts happening, you know it's Jesus.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be amazing to see the Busch Stadium, rip the Cardinals name off, and we write Jesus on the side of it, and we're just having church there inside the Busch Stadium. You know, it's a new place. It's a new place now. This is where we worship God now. Forget Fred Burton.
I think that to kind of for us, you know, for most people, for us, it's like it's easy for us to get that excited, you know, for Jesus. But for so many people, you know, even some believers, or I don't want to say so-called believers. I don't want to judge anybody, but you know, in the church service, like if they had that same mentality that they have at a Cardinals game, that like even if Albert Pujols doesn't hit a home run, they're still rooting him on.
They have faith for
like
too.
It's like, oh, I'm still gonna make noise because it's Albert Pujols.
They're still on their feet. They're still
versus
cheering.
like it being in church, like, well, I'm not gonna jump up and down. I'm not gonna raise my hands because I really don't like this song. They're just like looking at every reason not to do it. Versus just, man, dude, just engage because he's worthy of it. You know, when everybody can get that in mind, it's like, hey, look, he's worthy of more celebration than this. Bro, like when people ask, like sometimes we'll be like, dude, why are you dancing in the church? Be like, dude, because I used to dance in the world, and if I can dance in the world for something that's not of any value, of course I can dance for Jesus, regardless what it looks like, bro.
At the baseball games, we have a video camera that goes around to show people doing really ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
And everyone's trying to be on that camera and be a part of that.
That's an interesting point, yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you've never seen anyone in the games like, oh man, I don't want to look too foolish. Like people are painted up.
Yeah.
They got all this gear on. No one even thinks twice. But in church, we're so afraid, like, you know, someone might see me, someone might look at me.
Yeah.
And like, we're worshiping Jesus, man.
Yeah.
Like we should be so excited.
What
so
about the stories though? So you get a testimony and somebody's up there, like maybe Freedom's like sharing, we didn't know how we were going to pay for school, and all of a sudden our first month of school was paid for, and what do?
Yeah.
Golf clap.
Good
Golf
job.
clap.
Like, I mean, if somebody gets up there and like, I couldn't walk, now I can walk. What are we doing around here?
There's so much, man. I could just even go in.
Whoa.
Just after a worship song, somebody clapping. I'm like, what are we clapping for?
A baseball just
Why are
flew.
we clapping?
A baseball just flew and it went over the wall, and we're going crazy.
And everybody's jumping, and oh man.
But this person's life is transformed, changed. Their book is written in the book of life. They were in the kingdom of darkness, transferred to light, and we're like, yeah, that's great. You couldn't walk, and now you can. That's great. Yeah, your family's been in addiction for all these years, but this happened. That's great.
Yeah, I think that the faith level too is a big part of it. I mean, the three of us have big expectations for what we're believing to see God do in our city.
Mm-hmm.
At the baseball stadium, there is 50,000 people there who know that Albert Pujols is about to hit a home run. They just know it. They're just like, he's about to hit another one. He's going to get this. He's going to get the record. He's going to get it, right? They just know it. So everybody's experiencing and witnessing
faith. More faith.
They have more faith for that.
Not only is he going to do it, I'm going to be there to see it.
Yeah.
That's the faith
I bought the ticket because I'm going to see 700. I'm going today.
But that's the faith we have, John.
Yeah.
God's going to do it, and we're going to be there to see it.
Yes, but so I know that our city has the level of faith needed to bring a huge revival that sparks the city. I know we have it. I'm witnessing it happen secularly in the moment.
Yeah.
So when I'm expecting God to show up, I know that we have it in us. I know that if we can have faith for a baseball going over a wall, we can surely have enough faith to see our friends saved, their lives changed forever, and see what we've experienced happen in everyone that we know, and see under the arch full of people, and we're singing to God, and we're just experiencing life in another way that we've never experienced before.
You know, the crazy thought is that there's more believers probably in St. Louis than that fills the stadium.
Oh, I'll believe it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know? But we can't get everybody
we get
to
divided,
champion
right?
everything.
We get divided by everything.
Yeah, it's divided. We're looking for every possible way to divide. And, you know, my pastor said one message not too long ago that just really stood out. He says, the devil works in division, God works in multiplication. I was like, it's like, gosh, if that ain't just anything. I was like, dude, just end the service. Like, you could have just ended on that note. But it's so true, man. Like, the devil's going to look at anyway. You know, when we had that Patricia King, when she gave that message, like, dude, even us as believers, and I felt convicted, is like, man, I've judged somebody that, like, didn't believe in tongues. It's like, dude, that's just a way for the devil to divide me from that person. Like, no, this is my brother in Christ, period. You know, and we need to start looking at our common thing. It's like, hey, look, Jesus is the answer. We all agree that Jesus is the answer, and we let the Holy Spirit do the rest. Billy Graham had this great quote. It's God's job to judge, Holy Spirit's job to convict, and my job to love. So that's all we need to do is, like, love and just let the Lord do the rest, man. But I think that once we can get all in that same, you know, in agreement with something and united, you know, that's why I feel like every time I get so, like, amped up when it gets prayed for the time, I'm like, yes, we're going to have all these people united in prayer. Yeah. We're going to change our city, because I know that unity commands a blessing, man. It's in his word. So, you know, I just feel like once we get to that point where it's like, hey, look, we'll unite behind this as much as we unite behind Albert Pujols, that we are going to see some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, think of all the things that are being overcome at the baseball stadium. In a world where we are divided by who you voted for, or what you believe about black people or white people, or what you believe about cops or firemen, or what you believe about, you know, wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. So we're divided in all these things. But when it's time to watch that guy hit a ball, it's time to unite, folks. Let's get to the stadium. I don't care who you voted for. I'm going to scream right next to you. Yeah, I'm screaming with you. Like, that's crazy. So unity is possible. That's why I like Pray for Lou. It's like why I like anytime God's involved in something. I mean, it's going to be, we're trying something that doesn't involve us looking at each other through the lens of what.
It's looking at him.
Yeah.
We're just trying to get everyone to look at Jesus for a moment.
Yeah.
You know?
Amen.
I'm so excited for what's about to happen. I mean, I really, when I see, just thinking about what we're talking about, like the idea that like what God's about to do in our city is going to be bigger than anything we've seen at Busch Stadium. Like, that's an exciting thought to me.
Yeah.
That is exciting. You know, I've been to Winter Jam. It's nice. You know, like let's sing 20,000 of us. You know, we've only paid $10 to get in or whatever. You know, it's a nice little experience. But you know, what I'm gonna see when revival takes place in this city is bigger than that, you know. And I have spent the years, as we all have, going to the little revival events here in town, going to the ministry thing, and there's 6 people there, or there's 16 people there, and nothing happens, and you're like, God, where are you?
I can't stand the name revival events.
It's
such a, it's like even whenever somebody posts, I want to share that it's an event just so that people can go, but I just that thought process is like, you know, I don't want people, because then people are going to put like a time frame. Oh, cool. I'm going to really go this because revival is going to look like a couple days of, no, it's not a revival service. I want to see like something that goes all the way until when Jesus comes back.
When's that going to start? Well, you know,
when's that?
When we haven't planned it, I think that's the key. Like when we're just, it started. Oh my gosh.
Man knows the hour.
Yeah. Something happened. Like, did you hear that like, and you're like, who's in charge of that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Could you imagine that?
Yeah.
Like with all our, you know, we got to put our testimony, house logo on everything that we do, or our church banner up at the event. Could you imagine something being brought up in St. Louis where it's just like, I don't know who started. I don't know how that got going. You know, just went.
And why is it in Ladue and North City?
Yeah.
Or why is it in the Metro East? Or why is it in Jefferson? Why is it all these places?
Man, that gets me started.
Why is it all these?
I'm so excited.
Why is it all these denominations?
Yeah.
Why is it all these different worship styles? Why is it all these different types of people? Because it's the same Jesus.
Come on, somebody. All right. Well, guys, tell them how to find you on social media so they can reach out to you. Pray for Lou stuff.
Oh, social media. You can find me, Pray for Lou, Instagram and Facebook, and then personally, Man in Black STL on Instagram.
Hey, man, tell them about Hope Church and what you got going on.
Hope Church. We got Hope Church Youth. You can follow us on Instagram and on TikTok. It's Hope_YTH with an X afterwards for the experience. And you can follow me, Freedom Ochoa, on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. All right, guys, we will see you on the next episode of the New John Simmons Show. Thanks for watching this. Follow me at New John Simmons. Until next time, we pray you discover a future and a hope for your life today.